All right, so this is from your final exam. No, I did that like 14 times today. This is from your Unit 4B test, Unit 4B test review. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So with that being said, the goal for 4B is really just to be able to graph and like find the key features. So with these vertical asymptotes, horizontal asymptotes, we're going to talk through this really quick. So in order to find your vertical asymptote, what you need to do is you need to factor the top and the bottom first. Okay, so we're going to factor for vertical asymptotes. So for those of you who are like, I need steps, vertical asymptotes, you're going to factor and you're going to use what's in the denominator. Okay, so in the top, if we factor, we're going to get x times x minus 1. In the bottom, if we factor, we're going to pull out that negative 3, and we're going to be left with x minus 3. So for the vertical asymptote, what's going to happen is you're going to take what's in the denominator, set it equal to 0, and solve. So set it equal to 0, and then we're going to solve. So we're going to divide by a negative 3 on both sides. So x minus 3 equals 0. We're going to add 3 to both sides. So x is going to equal 3. So for my vertical asymptote, I'm going to have x equals 3. For my horizontal asymptote, I've got to use those 3 rules. And guys, you've got to have those memorized. I'm not going to give them to you. So for the 3 rules, you've got if the top is bigger than the bottom, then there's none. If the bottom is bigger than the top, then it's y equals 0. And if they're equal, then you use the coefficients. Okay, so this one, we've got the top is bigger than the bottom. We're looking at the exponents. So if the top is bigger than the bottom, then we have no horizontal asymptote. And you're always going to write either NA or you're going to write none. For x-intercepts and y-intercepts, this is where it crosses the x-axis, and this is where it crosses the y-axis. Okay, the best way to do this is to really just plug the graph into your graphing calculator. I'm going to show you that in just 1 second. All right, so this is what the graph looks like, and obviously I use like a Desmos version, but you would use your graphing calculator in order to graph this. For those of you who are struggling with graphing, one thing that I would really look at is, and I'm going to drop this in here so that you can see it. One thing that I would really focus on doing is getting in the habit of plugging it into your graphing calculator, because you are going to have that as an option on your final exam. So please make sure that you use your technology. When you do type it into your graphing calculator, make sure that you put parentheses in the top and then put parentheses in the bottom. So what I mean by that is putting parentheses up here and putting parentheses down here. Otherwise, you're telling your graphing calculator something else. So when you type into your graphing calculator, you're going to hit that y equals button. You're going to type what's in the top in those parentheses, divided by what's in the bottom, and then you're going to hit graph. And that's going to produce this graph, which is going to help you figure out what your y-intercept is and your x-intercept is. So if you look at the y-axis on this guy, okay, so we look at the y-axis, all right, we're going to see that it crosses at 0, 0. So our y-intercept is also going to be 0. We're also going to have an x-intercept at 0 as well, okay? So we're going to have an x-intercept at 0. We're also going to have an x-intercept at x equals 1. And the way I find this out, because that's kind of hard to see, you're actually going to use the numbers that are in the top, just for future reference. Normally you'll be able to just pick it from an answer choice, but for your x-intercept, you're going to have x equals 0, and you're also going to have 1. Remember how we factored in the top up here? Well, we can set both of these equal to 0, and you can solve. So we're going to set this guy equal to 0, and then we're going to set this guy equal to 0, and we're going to solve. So x equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0. So that'll give you x equals 0, and x equals 1 equals 0. You're good. Give me 1 sec. All right, so on the top, you're going to factor, and on the bottom, you're going to factor on this one. So the top, you're going to factor, and the bottom, you're going to factor. So if we do 8 times c, that's going to be negative 6. B is going to give us 1. Two numbers will make that happen, 3 and negative 2. So on the top, it'll be written as x plus 3 and x minus 2. In the bottom, we're going to have A times C, that's going to give us negative 2, and B is going to give us 1. What two numbers will make that happen? 2 and negative 1. So this can be rewritten as this. Alright, so our vertical asymptote comes from the denominator. So we're going to set anything in the denominator equal to 0 and solve. So that's going to give me x equals negative 2 and x equals 1. For the horizontal asymptote, we're going to look at our exponents. They're the same, so we're going to use the leading coefficients. We're going to divide them. So y is going to equal 1. For these x-intercepts and y-intercepts, we're going to use the graph. And so in this case, if we put this graph into our graphing calculator, or if we use Desmos, our graph's going to look like this. As we can see, we've got a vertical asymptote at x equals negative 2, which is right in here. We've got a vertical asymptote at x equals 1, which is right in here. We've got a horizontal asymptote at y equals 1. Okay, so it's where those blank spaces are happening. So for our x-intercepts, we're going to have a cross at x equals negative 3 and x equals 2. We can see that from our graph. X equals negative 3, x equals 2 from our graph. And then we also see that we have a y-intercept at 1, 2, 3. Y-intercept at y equals 3. Alright, so on this one, we're kind of combining 4a and 4b units. So on number 3, what's going to happen is we're going to factor out greatest common factor. So from here, this is going to be 6r squared. We're going to be left over with r plus 7. Over here, we're going to have 1 over 9r squared. This is going to be r plus 7. As we notice, we're going to have things that cancel out. So these two things will cancel out. Well, we know that there's going to be a hole at r equals negative 7 because we know that holes come from anything that we cancel out. Okay, over here, we're also going to cancel out this r squared, right? And that means that we're also going to have a hole at r equals 0. So we're left over with 6 times 1 and 9 in the bottom. So this is actually going to give us a constant of 2/3. So we don't have a vertical asymptote, and we're not going to have a horizontal asymptote because we would have a horizontal asymptote because we would have r to the 3rd power, r to the 2nd power, and if we multiplied straight across, we would get r to the 3rd over r to the 3rd, which is the same on top and bottom, so that's going to give us 2/3 as a horizontal asymptote. Boom. Alright, we're going to skip over 4 just because you're not going to see anything like that on your test, so we're going to go ahead and go to number 5. So in the top, we would factor. So a times c is going to give me negative 16, and b is going to give me 0. What two numbers will make that happen? 4 and negative 4. So I can rewrite the top as n plus 4 times n minus 4. In the bottom, we can factor this, and that'll give me 4 in the top and negative 5 in the bottom. What two numbers will make that happen? Negative 4 and negative 1. So this can be written as n minus 4 times n minus 1. Now, I know that I can cancel out those two, so I'm going to have a hole, or an excluded value, at n equals 4. And I'm also going to have a vertical asymptote at n equals 1, because I'm going to take what's in the denominator, set it equal to 0, and solve. I'm going to have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 1, because I have the same exponent. So I'm going to take the a and the b and put them over each other, and that's going to give me y equals 1. So on number 6, we're going to use the method of keep, change, flip. So we're going to keep the first term, change the sign, and flip the last one. Okay, now we can combine like terms, and we're also going to cancel out anything that's in the top and the bottom. So we can cancel these out. So that's going to give me a hole at x equals 7 we're going to have a vertical asymptote at x equals 6 because that's what's left over in the denominator. We're also going to have a horizontal asymptote at, if we multiplied all of this out, we would have 9 times x minus 10 over 9 times x minus 6. So we would have 9 over 9, which is going to give us 1. And so there's a horizontal asymptote at y equals 1. Alright, so this stuff comes from 4a. This is just kind of like a review, but good to see it again. If we have the same thing in the denominator, then what we're going to do is you're going to combine like terms in the top and then cancel or simplify if we can. So we have 4x minus x, that's going to give us 3x. Negative 2 minus negative 4, that's going to give us a positive 2. We're going to put that over 6x plus 3. We can't simplify anymore, so this would be our final answer. But remember, we have to state our excluded values. So we're going to take what's in the denominator, set it equal to 0, and we're going to solve. So x is not going to be equal to negative 5 because that would give us an undefined answer. Alright, on number 8, we've got different denominators. So we're going to have to take what is in the denominator and find a common denominator. So what I would do is I would take this and multiply this stuff over here and this and multiply this stuff over here. So that's going to give me v minus 5 over 3v plus 3. And I'm going to multiply that on the top and bottom by 3. And multiply by 3. Over here, we're going to have v minus 1, and we're going to multiply it by 3v plus 3. We're going to make all of this one big fraction. So now we're going to distribute. So 3 times v is going to give us 3v. 3 times negative 5 is going to give us negative 15. v times 3v is going to give us 3v squared. v times 3 is going to give us 3v. Negative 1 times 3v is going to give us negative 3v. And negative 1 times 3 is going to give us negative 3. It's going to give me this on the bottom. Alright, so now I'm going to combine like terms. So this will cancel out. And then I'll have 3v squared plus 3v minus 18 over 3 times 3v plus 3. Alright, so on this one, what you would do is you would cancel out a 3 in the top and bottom, just because you want to make your life easier. This would cancel out, this would cancel out, and this would become negative 6. So this is going to be v squared plus v minus 6 over 3v plus 3.
No, like, I didn't do the